My name is Claire, and I'm 33 years old. And if you had told me 5 years ago that my own mother would one day look me in the eye and say I wasn't real family compared to her stepchildren, I would have laughed and said you were being dramatic. But here I am, replaying those words in my head every night as if they were burned into my memory. The truth is, you never expect the knife to come from the people you trust to protect you. But sometimes, family betrayal cuts the deepest, and my story begins long before that one sentence that shattered me. To understand how we got there, you need to know who I am and what my life looked like before my mom remarried. I grew up as the only child of a single mother, and for most of my childhood, it was just the two of us against the world. My father left when I was barely 3 years old, and from what I've been told, he never looked back. My mom, Elaine, was tough, too tough sometimes, but she raised me with routines, discipline, and the kind of resilience that made me independent early. I put myself through college by working as a waitress during the nights and landed a stable job afterward as a speech therapist at an elementary school. I wasn't rich, but I was proud of the life I had built. When my mom met Robert, things seemed fine at first. He was a widower with 2 teenage kids, Sarah, who was 16, and Tyler, who was 14. They were polite when I met them, but there was always this unspoken air that they belonged in a different circle than me, like they were the real family unit, and I was an extra. Still, I tried to embrace the idea of having step-siblings. I brought gifts for their birthdays, I showed up to their school plays, and I went along with family dinners, even though I often felt invisible at the table. My mom was glowing in those early days, happier than I had ever seen her, and I told myself that was enough. For the first few months, I brushed off the small slights. The way Sarah rolled her eyes when I asked her about school. The way Robert referred to me as Elaine's daughter, while proudly introducing his kids as my son, my daughter. The way my mom, trying too hard to blend families, would often side with Robert in every little discussion. But then came the first holiday we spent together as a blended family, and that's when I felt the shift. It was Christmas Eve, the tree was sparkling in the corner, and we were gathered in the living room exchanging gifts. Robert handed Sarah a brand new iPhone, the latest model with the box still sealed. Tyler got a pair of expensive sneakers that had been sold out everywhere. When it was my turn, my mom passed me a neatly wrapped package with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside was a set of scented candles from the clearance rack. I know because the price tag was still stuck underneath. I tried to smile and say thank you, but something inside me cracked. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about what the gifts symbolized: priority, thoughtfulness, love. That night, as I helped clean up wrapping paper while Sarah and Tyler snapped selfies with their new treasures, my mom barely noticed me. And that was the first time I wondered if maybe, just maybe, my place in her new family was shrinking. I told myself to stop being childish. I was an adult, after all. I had my own apartment, my own job, and I wasn't supposed to care about material things. But caring isn't about the object. It's about the meaning behind it. And when your own mother seems to rank you last, it's impossible not to care. The months that followed were a slow erosion of whatever bond my mom and I had left. Every family dinner was a performance where Robert bragged about Sarah's grades or Tyler's soccer achievements, while I sat quietly, waiting for my mom to ask me about my day, my work, my life. She never did, and then came the day that would haunt me forever. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun slants through the blinds and makes the whole living room glow. Sarah and Tyler were sprawled on the couch, arguing about which movie to watch. Robert was in the recliner sipping coffee, and I was clearing dishes from the table. My mom walked in, adjusting her sweater, and out of nowhere she said, "Claire, you need to remember something. You're not real family in the same way Sarah and Tyler are. You're grown. You're independent. You'll always have me, of course, but they're children. They're my priority now." The room went silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock. I froze, the plate in my hands trembling. "Not real family?" I asked, my voice breaking in a way I hated. She looked at me like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "You know what I mean," she said, waving her hand. "Don't take it so personally." Sarah smirked, Tyler laughed, and Robert looked away, pretending to scroll his phone. In that moment, I wasn't 33 years old with a career and a life. I was a little girl again, desperate for my mother's approval and realizing she had just handed it to someone else. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and locked the door. I sat on the cold tile floor staring at my reflection in the mirror, tears blurring my vision, and the words replaying in my mind. Not real family. It was like a curse that stripped away decades of sacrifice and loyalty, as if every moment I had stood by her side meant nothing. That was the day the story truly began, the day my mom drew a line in the sand, the day I realized that love with conditions isn't love at all. What she didn't know was that I had more strength in me than she realized, and one day soon she would see it. After that Sunday, I thought maybe my mom would realize how much her words had hurt me. But instead, it felt like she had opened a door she never planned to close. A door that led to a version of my life where I was always standing outside looking in. The very next week, I came over after work, still in my scrubs from the clinic, exhausted but hoping to share dinner with them. Sarah had invited her friends over, their voices echoing through the living room as they laughed and played music. Robert was grilling steaks in the backyard, the smell filling the air, and my mom was setting the table with her good china, the set she used to save for Christmas. I walked into the kitchen and she glanced at me, almost startled. "Oh, Claire, I didn't think you'd be coming tonight," she said, her tone polite but distant. "We only had enough steaks for the kids and their friends. There's some leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." She said it like I was a neighbor dropping by uninvited, not her daughter who had driven across town just to be there. I ate the cold pasta alone in the kitchen while everyone else laughed in the dining room, and every clink of silverware felt like a reminder that I didn't belong. Moments like that piled up. Easter came, and Robert hosted an egg hunt in the backyard for Sarah and Tyler, even though they were practically adults. My mom beamed, snapping pictures, posting them on Facebook with captions like, "So blessed to have these amazing kids." My name was never mentioned. When I asked if she wanted to grab brunch together, just the two of us, she said, "Oh, honey, maybe another time. The kids keep me so busy." It wasn't just holidays either. My mom started leaning on me less and less, but not because she wanted me to rest. It was because she had Sarah and Tyler to fill the space I once occupied. When her car broke down, it was Tyler she called to drive her to the mechanic, even though he had only just gotten his license. When she wanted help picking out a new outfit, she took Sarah to the mall. And when I called one night after a long day, just wanting to hear her voice, she cut the conversation short, saying, "I'm watching a movie with Robert and the kids. Can we talk later?" Later never came. The bitterness was building, but I tried to swallow it. I told myself she was just caught up in the glow of her new marriage, that once things settled, she'd find her balance again. But then came the 4th of July barbecue, and any illusion I had shattered completely. She had asked me to come early to help set up, so I showed up with bags of chips, drinks, and a homemade pie. I strung lights across the porch, arranged chairs in the yard, and spent an hour prepping food in the kitchen while Sarah and Tyler lounged with their friends by the pool. When the party started, everyone gathered around the picnic tables. Robert stood up, clinking his glass, and gave a little speech about family. "I just want to say how lucky I am to have Sarah and Tyler," he said proudly, "and to see how Elaine has embraced them as her own. We're stronger together because of these kids." My mom nodded vigorously, her arm around Sarah's shoulders, smiling as if the world began and ended with them. No one mentioned me. No one acknowledged the work I had done that day, or the fact that I was part of that family too. When someone asked for a group photo, I was literally told to take the picture. So there I stood, holding the camera, framing a shot of my mom, her husband, and her real family, while I was just the shadow behind the lens. Later that night, as the fireworks lit up the sky, I slipped away to sit on the porch steps. I could hear the cheers and laughter inside, but I felt invisible. That's when Sarah came out, her phone in her hand, smirking. "You know," she said casually, "Dad says Mom's just happier now that she has us. It's like you're more like a distant relative than her daughter." "No offense." She said it with a laugh like it was some big joke, then walked back inside before I could even respond. I sat there staring at the dark sky, the fireworks cracking above me, and I wondered if this was my life now, always on the outside, always second best. But even then, I wasn't ready to confront them. I told myself I could endure it. I worked long shifts, sometimes 12 hours straight, and I convinced myself that if I just focused on my career, it wouldn't hurt as much. But it did. Every time I came home to my own empty apartment, I thought about how my mom used to call me her rock, how we used to be a team, and now she couldn't even look at me without reminding me I was less than. By the time fall came around, the favoritism was undeniable. Sarah got a car for her birthday, a shiny used SUV with a big red bow in the driveway. My mom cried tears of joy, hugging her, saying, "Every girl deserves to drive into her future with style." Tyler got a brand new gaming computer, complete with 3 monitors and a custom chair. When my birthday rolled around 2 weeks later, my mom sent me a text at noon. "Happy birthday, honey. Love you." That was it. No cake, no dinner, not even a phone call. I sat at my desk at work staring at the message, my chest tight. I didn't even reply. Because what was the point? It was like I had been erased from her definition of family. That's when the bitterness started turning into something else. Resolve. I knew I couldn't go on like this forever. Something had to change. But before I could figure out how, the situation would spiral even further out of control, and I would be forced to choose between silence and standing up for myself in a way that would shock everyone. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I was already bracing myself for disappointment. But I still held on to this tiny hope that maybe my mom would notice me. Maybe she'd remember how it used to be when it was just the two of us cooking in the kitchen together, laughing as the turkey burned or the stuffing came out too salty. Instead, I showed up to her house with 2 pumpkin pies I baked from scratch, only to find Sarah already in the kitchen with my mom, wearing matching aprons that said, "Elaine's Girls." My mom glanced at me as if I had interrupted something private. "Oh, Claire," she said quickly, "thanks for the pies. Just put them on the counter." Then she turned right back to Sarah, handing her a spoon to stir the gravy. It felt like I had walked into someone else's family gathering. At dinner, Robert gave a toast about gratitude for the family that holds us together, raising his glass towards Sarah and Tyler. My mom wiped away tears, saying she was so proud of them, how they'd grown, how they made her life complete. She never once mentioned me. I sat there staring at my plate, my face burning, pretending the food didn't taste like ashes in my mouth. Afterward, I offered to help clean up, but Sarah laughed and said, "Mom and I got it. Why don't you relax?" So I went to the living room, where Tyler and his friends were playing video games on the giant flat-screen TV my mom had just bought for him. I sat on the edge of the couch, ignored, as if I were a guest overstaying her welcome. That night, lying in bed at my own apartment, I decided I couldn't do this anymore. But just when I thought I was ready to pull away completely, something happened that dragged me even deeper into the mess. In December, my mom called, unusually cheerful, and asked if I could help her with some paperwork. I agreed, thinking maybe this was my chance to feel useful again, to reconnect. When I got to her house, she handed me a stack of bills and insurance forms. I sat at the kitchen table sorting through them when I realized half the utilities were in my name. My name. I hadn't lived there since college, but apparently she had kept me on the accounts, and now I was responsible for hundreds of dollars in overdue charges. When I asked her about it, she shrugged. "It's easier this way. You're good with money, Claire. The kids shouldn't have to worry about stuff like this." I stared at her, stunned. "Mom, I shouldn't have to worry about it either. This isn't my responsibility." She waved her hand, dismissing me. "Don't make a big deal out of everything. You're strong. You can handle it." That's when it hit me. She didn't just see me as less than Sarah and Tyler. She saw me as a resource, a safety net she could tap into whenever she wanted, while giving all her love and attention to them. I felt used, invisible, and angry all at once. Christmas was worse. I told myself I wouldn't go, but at the last minute, guilt got the better of me. I walked into the living room on Christmas morning and froze. In the center of the room, with a giant red bow on top, was a brand new BMW SUV. Sarah squealed, hugging Robert and my mom, tears running down her face. "This is the best Christmas ever," she shouted. Tyler got an electric guitar, an amp, and a pile of accessories. My mom was glowing, snapping photos, clapping her hands. Then she handed me a small envelope. I opened it to find a folded $2 bill inside. Just one. She smiled faintly. "It's for good luck, honey. Good luck." That's all I was worth. A piece of paper you could find in a tip jar. I felt the blood drain from my face as Sarah hugged her keys, as Tyler posed with his guitar, as Robert beamed with pride. I slipped out to the porch, the cold air biting my skin, tears stinging my eyes. That was the breaking point. That night, around 2 a.m., I blocked my mom's number. I couldn't take another second of being her afterthought. But even blocking her wasn't the end, because the story didn't stop there. A week later, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my apartment door. It was from my mom. In shaky handwriting, she wrote, "Claire, please understand, I love you, but you're different now. Sarah and Tyler need me. You're strong, you're independent, you don't need me the way they do. Don't be angry. One day you'll see I did what was right." I crumpled the letter in my hands, shaking with fury. Did what was right? For who? Certainly not for me. That letter was the final nail in the coffin of whatever relationship we had left. But as much as I wanted to erase her from my life, fate wasn't done with me yet. Because what my mom didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the very foundation of their perfect little world was about to crack wide open. And when it did, everything they thought they had over me would vanish in an instant. The letter should have been the end, but instead it became the spark. A month later, I got a call from my Aunt Ruth, my mom's older sister, who I hadn't seen in years. Her voice was gentle but steady. "Claire, I heard what's been happening. Why don't you come see me this weekend?" I almost said no, too drained to open another wound. But something in her tone made me agree. When I arrived at her house, a modest little bungalow tucked away on a quiet street, she welcomed me with open arms. Over tea, she listened as I poured everything out. The BMW, the $2 bill, the constant dismissal, the words, "not real family," echoing in my head. She didn't interrupt, just nodded, her eyes full of something I hadn't seen in months. Genuine care. When I finished, she reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Claire, you've carried so much for so long. I want you to know, I've always seen you, and I've made arrangements to make sure you're taken care of." I blinked. "Arrangements?" She smiled faintly. "I've updated my will. My home, my savings, everything I have, it will be yours. You've earned it, not because you need to prove anything, but because you deserve to know someone values you." I was speechless. For the first time in years, I felt validated. But that moment of peace didn't last. Somehow word got back to my mom and Robert. A week later, I was invited, summoned, to a family dinner. Against my better judgment, I went, hoping maybe it was a chance to clear the air. Instead, it was an ambush. I walked into the dining room to find my mom, Robert, Sarah, and Tyler all seated, their faces grim. On the table lay a copy of Aunt Ruth's will. My heart pounded. "Care to explain this?" Robert asked, his voice low and sharp. "You think you can manipulate Ruth into giving you everything?" Sarah sneered. Classic Claire, always playing the victim. My mom's face was tight with anger. "Claire, how could you do this? After everything Robert and I have given you, you turn Ruth against us?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Given me? What have you given me besides scraps and insults? You gave Sarah a BMW, Tyler a brand new life, and you gave me a $2 bill. And now you're angry because someone finally saw my worth?" The room erupted. Tyler shouted something about me being selfish. Robert slammed his fist on the table. Sarah rolled her eyes and called me pathetic. Through it all, my mom just stared at me, disappointment etched into every line of her face. Finally, I stood, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "I didn't manipulate anyone. Ruth made her own choice, just like you made yours when you chose them over me. The difference is, she chose to love me instead of erase me." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. My mom's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. I turned and walked toward the door, my legs shaking but my spine straight. That should have been the end, but Robert wasn't finished. 2 days later, I received a letter from their lawyer. They were contesting Ruth's will, claiming undue influence. I sat on my couch with the letter in my hands, my chest tight, my eyes burning. I had never wanted a war, but they had declared one. The court date was set for March. Walking into that courtroom, I felt like David facing Goliath. Robert in his tailored suit, Sarah and Tyler sitting smugly beside him, my mom avoiding my gaze. On the other side, it was just me and Aunt Ruth, frail but resolute, clutching her cane like a weapon. When the judge asked if Ruth had been pressured, she lifted her chin. Absolutely not. I made my decision because Claire is the only one who has ever treated me with respect, the only one who hasn't used me. If they feel entitled, that's their problem, not mine. My mom shifted uncomfortably. Robert muttered something under his breath, and Sarah's smug expression faltered. My lawyer presented the paperwork, signed and notarized, airtight. Their claims crumbled under scrutiny. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The will stood. I walked out of that courtroom with tears in my eyes, not from greed or victory, but from relief. Relief that for once I wasn't the outsider, the afterthought, the not real family. I was someone worth standing up for. As I stepped into the sunlight, my mom finally approached me. Her voice was cold, brittle. You've destroyed this family. I looked her in the eye, years of pain boiling down to one truth. No, Mom, you did that the moment you told me I wasn't real family. She flinched as if I had struck her, and for the first time I saw doubt in her eyes. I turned away, clutching the court papers in my hand, knowing the story wasn't over, but also knowing the power had shifted. What they didn't know, what they still don't fully understand, is that I wasn't going to let them write me out again. Not this time. In the weeks after the court ruling, everything felt strangely quiet, like the calm after a thunderstorm where the air still smells like smoke and the ground is littered with broken branches. I moved into Aunt Ruth's house, not because I wanted to rub it in anyone's face, but because it felt like a safe place to breathe again. The bungalow was small, cozy, with faded wallpaper and creaky floors, but it was mine, or at least it was entrusted to me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. Ruth and I spent evenings drinking tea on the porch, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes, and she would remind me, Claire, don't let them convince you you're less than. You've always been enough. I held on to those words like a lifeline. Meanwhile, my mom barely spoke to me. Weeks passed without a single call. When she finally reached out, it was a text that said, "You've changed. I don't recognize you anymore." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Maybe I finally became someone you can't control. She never answered. Robert, of course, was furious. He sent a string of angry emails accusing me of tearing the family apart, of stealing from his kids, of being ungrateful. I didn't respond. Sarah unfollowed me on social media. Tyler blocked me outright. It stung, but less than I expected, because the truth was I had already grieved the loss of their acceptance long before. What surprised me most was the silence from my mom. A part of me thought she would eventually come around, that she would show up at my door, admit she had been wrong, beg for forgiveness. But that day never came. Instead, I built my own routine. I decorated Ruth's house with things that felt like me. Plants by the window, my favorite books stacked by the bed, a framed photo of me and Ruth smiling at the courthouse. I kept working at the clinic, pouring myself into helping kids find their voices, and in some strange way, it healed me too. I realized I had spent years trying to earn a place in my mom's world, when all along I already had my own. The turning point came one Sunday afternoon when I was baking cookies in the kitchen. The radio was playing softly. The smell of chocolate and butter filled the air, and for the first time in forever, I felt at peace. I laughed out loud at nothing in particular, just because I could, and I thought, this is what real family feels like. It's not about blood, it's about love, respect, and showing up for each other. Ruth shuffled in, leaning on her cane, and smiled. "You look lighter," she said. And she was right. I was lighter. Not because the weight of their rejection disappeared, but because I had finally stopped carrying it. Months passed, and eventually word reached me that Sarah had crashed the BMW, that Robert was drowning in debt, that Tyler dropped out of school. My mom never called me about any of it. I only heard through mutual relatives. A part of me wanted to reach out, to check on them, but then I remembered the letter on my apartment door, the words, "You're not real family," and I knew it wasn't my job to fix what they broke. The truth is, family doesn't get to use you like an ATM, discard you when you're inconvenient, then come crawling back only when they need saving. I had to learn that the hard way. Now, when I sit on the porch at night, sipping tea while the crickets chirp, I ask myself if I miss them. The answer is complicated. I miss the idea of a mother who put me first, who saw me as her daughter no matter what. I miss the version of us that existed before Robert and his kids. But do I miss the people they became? No, not anymore. Because I finally understand that losing people who refuse to value you isn't really a loss. It's a release. And here's the thing. I know my story isn't unique. I know there are people out there listening right now who've been told by their own family that they're not enough, that they're not real compared to someone else. If that's you, hear me when I say you don't have to accept that. You don't have to keep sitting at a table where you're served scraps while everyone else feasts. You are allowed to stand up, walk away, and build a table of your own. That's what I did. That's what saved me. And now I'll leave you with this question. If your own mother told you that you weren't real family, would you fight for her love? Or would you finally fight for yourself?